I come from a mixed race family. My dad is American, fourth generation, but of Italian descent, and my mom is from Laos. She immigrated in the 1970s with her family. And though only one of those cultures is reflected in my very Italian name, Leonard Giarrano, my mom's culture and both histories are still very important to me. My mom's family immigrated in the 1970s, fleeing Laos in anticipation of the 1975 government transition, persecution, communism, and the re-education that happened. And my mom and her siblings were sent to different parts of the world in anticipation of that. So my mom, at the age of 17, moved to New York City alone in 1972 or 73. She worked 3 jobs while in college on her student visa, working day and night very hard to eventually bring the rest of her family along with her. She was the only one who spoke English as fluently as she did, and so she went to New York City where, though she had a family friend or two to assist her, she was largely alone. And as an immigrant, that was very tough. She was only 17 years old, and you can imagine where you were when you were 17, and it was likely a very different place with very different responsibilities on your own shoulders. And so this is just a taste of the narrative of how hard my mom worked, and one of the stories among many others about Laos and her immigration and her family that she shared with my younger sister and I while we were growing up. It would always be, say we had misbehaved or we were asking for something that she didn't want to get for us for whatever reason. She would tell us one of these stories and then always finish with the line, "You are so blessed to have been born in the United States. You don't know what you have here or what I had to leave behind." And my sister and I, we heard that line over and over again, every story growing up, and we always said, "Mom, we've heard this story 1,000 times. We sort of get it." And so when I saw the opportunity through DukeEngage to apply and go to Vietnam for the summer, a place very close to a quarter of my family's roots, and Laos, where my mom is from, and Vietnam, where her father is actually from, I leapt at the opportunity to sort of explore this and see, some of my mom's life before she moved when she was just 17. And so turning to DukeEngage broadly, we all know more or less why we do DukeEngage. It's a great opportunity for your summer after one of your years. It's traveling to these wonderful places throughout the world and throughout the United States at over 30 or 40 locations. It's fully funded, what's not to love about that. And you're doing great service work. You meet site coordinators and community partners who are really wonderful in helping facilitate these programs through and with DukeEngage. And of course, the people you meet who you either live with or interact with through your summer are sort of the meat of the program and sort of give you the reason for going. But beyond that, in terms of reflection and fitting that into your experience, you have to ask yourself, why are you doing DukeEngage? Why did you apply for this experience? Why are you there when you're there? What do you remember about it afterwards, and what do you carry forward? And so that's the story I want to tell today. So when my group went to Vietnam, it was myself and 9 other Duke students for a total of 10. We lived with 10 Vietnamese college students our own age who did everything with us. We worked on work sites in the morning, improving local primary schools with physical infrastructure. And in the afternoon, the 20 of us split into pairs and taught English classes to secondary students. It was great fun. The work sites had all the camaraderie and jokes you can imagine. Working with the local masons and getting our projects done, seeing our progress over the summer was very fulfilling, and we had a ton of fun learning how to do things like use pickaxes and all that. Teaching English was a wonderful experience. The students in our classes loved us, and we loved them just as much. The games that we played and the lessons that we taught were never so much work as really something to look forward to every afternoon for an hour and a half. And then the roommates themselves that we lived with, they became like brothers and sisters to us, our best friends for the course of the summer. We went on weekend trips through CET, our partner organization, and through some weekends we organized ourselves. We traveled, we saw great cultural things. It was like the anniversary of the war 40 years prior. And we just had a ball. It was exhilarating having such a favorable currency exchange, enjoying all the food and seeing all the people and their language and culture. It was, there was nothing not to love. It was a honeymoon period for sure for the 8 weeks that we were there. And truly wonderful in that respect, the work that we did and the experiences that we gained. But as with anything, over time there were cracks in the sidewalk that you sort of noticed. There were things that made you a little uncomfortable, not to invalidate the country or anything about it, but there were differences you noticed, things like the way that the government had become and changed over the years for the better, but at its roots, the differences in political and social freedoms. Things like nepotism or the questions about government funding and how that went down, not necessarily invalid in any ways, but there were things that certainly rubbed you the wrong way. And there were roots in a whole different country halfway around the world that you just had to sort of appreciate the differences. And those differences really manifested in the roommates that we stayed with, all wonderful, awesome students, like I said, our best friends. But with marked differences in opportunity. Many of them were studying English, some of them economics, to go on to do different jobs that were appropriate for their studies. But when it came time to leave after 6.5 weeks in Quang Tri and 8 weeks in the program, saying goodbye was really hard. We knew that the 10 of them were going back to their studies. Some of them had graduated after that summer. And they would go on to do work and great things, but for all of the children that we met, say in the English classes or just around, life was very different for them going forward. The 10 of us were going back to Duke, onto medical school, computer science, internships, and other great opportunities like DukeEngage offered because we had the privilege of going to Duke. And while nothing was absolutely wrong with that, there was a certain sense of injustice that I felt or I couldn't quite shake. Nothing so poisonous, but something that gave me pause, certainly. In thinking about the good on the trip, there was also some bad and some questions that you couldn't really avoid. And so there was catharsis in that. Coming back to the United States, anybody who's been abroad will find themselves at least a little disgusted by the wealth, the luxury, the excesses. When you've been in a country where the quality of water or the quality of the education from day to day or the access may not be so good depending on where you are, what class you're born into, how hard your parents work, or what role the government has in your life or your business. All things that we take for granted in the United States. And that's not to say that social mobility and economic mobility are perfect in the United States, but it's to say that the difference in opportunity is something you really don't have your eyes open to until you've been there, until you've had those experiences and really asked yourself, what is it like beyond the textbooks, beyond the stories that even I can share? It's entirely different to experience it firsthand. So in my mind, there was brilliant catharsis in that, and I just had to think about that or else the experience would be wasted on me. And what a shame that would be. So when I came back home, after 23 some hours of flying to get back to the airport in Tampa where I'm from, I got off the plane and I told my mom at some point soon thereafter, Mom, I get it. I understand everything that you've worked for me. I understand a little bit of what you've left behind, better than I did when I left. And that was deep and something that we really bonded over and sort of connected. She knew over the course of the years as my sister and I grew up that we were slowly maturing and understanding what she and my father had done to raise us and to give us this sort of opportunity at different universities that had programs like DukeEngage, and how all of that collected over the years. And so that was a deeply powerful moment in my personal life. And as you go into different things through DukeEngage, you have to ask yourself where your experiences will carry forward. If each of us collects experiences over time, we also have to be window panes into those experiences for other people. And whether that's retelling stories, storytelling is a gift to others. It's a deeply personal or intimate moment when you're sharing something, how you felt, what you thought, what you said, and what you did. Or whether it's, doing research or having the experience you had manifest itself in another motivation in an entirely different field. Whatever it is, the only thing that fogs up that window pane and hides your experiences from the world is your own, neglect or laziness. And part of DukeEngage is not letting that happen, not letting that be the case. Through the academy and through talking to each other and making sure you never forget what you felt in that moment that was so special, and not letting that fade over time and, through other experiences, come as they may, with the course of life. Letting others into that experience and sharing that and demonstrating your understanding is really important. And so, after I came back from DukeEngage, I sort of had a sixth sense of empathy that was strengthened by the experience. I saw others not only for what they did, but what they had to do to get there. Like the experiences my mom had had trying to get to the United States and making that transition work halfway across the world. So through these programs, the hope is that you learn something And that's a very simple message, but it manifests in so many complicated and challenging ways. So I hope you have good summers, or if you've been a program alumni, that you continue to reflect on these positions. And yeah, tell stories and make sure that none of these experiences die over the long term. Because the best product you get out of DukeEngage may not be the work that you do or the people that you meet, but the product is yourself and how you've changed as a result of the experience and how you've changed or been changed by others. Thank you.